And to the tiebreak day of FIDE World Chess Grand Prix 2022. Reminder, it's a first tournament in Berlin. The qualification stage is almost finished, right? We had double round robin. We already know names of 2 semi-finalists, and 2 other semi-finalists will be determined today. So 3 minutes before the start of the game, you can see some of the players. I wanted to say all of the players, but some of them are already seated, and I believe Jesse, my co-host, is with me here. Jesse, can you hear me?
Hi, Miro. How are you?
Well, I'm excited. Tiebreak usually is, you know, a lot of emotions, a lot of things happening. So
you jumped straight into the time trouble.
yeah. So it's a pleasure to watch very often. Right. A little bit on the tiebreak system. It's actually quite usual for those who have at least once watched the World Cup or stuff like that. So 15 minutes plus 10 seconds will be the first time control for the tiebreak, right? So 2 rapid games will be played. In case still tied, they'll proceed to play a mini match of 2 blitz games, and in those blitz games we will have 3 minutes plus 2 seconds increment time control, and then eventually, if this one will be still tied, we will have a sudden death or Armageddon game where white gets 1 extra minute but black gets draw odds. Okay, so
yeah, and do the players actually get some time in between their games against each other?
Yeah, I think yeah, since we have 2 games, right, they will start simultaneously. So after the longer game is finished, out of the 2, right, there will be 10 to 15 minutes break depending on the arbiter's decision, and the second game of the mini match will be starting simultaneously in both matches. In game 1, Wesley Saw has the white pieces against Domingues, and I believe Radoslav Wojtaszek has the white pieces against Richard Rapport. Right. Well, for Wesley Saw and Nier Domingues, honestly, I do not know what to expect. Well, Wesley is a bit higher rated, I believe, in classical chess, but really a bit, right? So now I'm checking, it's only 20 points for classical chess. Wesley is known to be kind of a rapid specialist. He tends to do very well in rapid tournaments, but Domingues, as I've pointed out, he is a very good blitz player. He was once a world blitz champion, and if it comes to blitz, I'm not sure if Wesley is the favorite, right? For Wojtaszek and Rapport, honestly, I do not have that much of an opinion. Both strong players, but like, who out of those 2 would prefer the shorter time control? I don't know.
Indeed.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Of course,
That's
everyone
great.
can hear you.
Sorry, I wasn't. That's good. I wasn't sure for a moment because there was some of what you said that were just gaps in my volume. I'm really sorry about that. But yeah, I agree with you. Today's going to be really exciting chess, a much faster time control. And do you think that any players we have here today are so evenly matched in the faster time control that we would even have an Armageddon?
Yeah, quite possible. This is quite possible, but yeah, you know, it's very hard with predictions on tie breaks, honestly, because some matches that you think one player is the clear favorite, which is not the case now. Sometimes they go on and on and on, right? And then when 2 players evenly matched, all of a sudden, I mean, it's one mistake. It only takes one mistake, you lose the game, and the fact that you're evenly matched with your opponent means it's very hard to come back, right? So it's really a bit of a lottery, quite unpredictable, and that's what makes it exciting. And
Indeed, it's so weird to see the players sitting at the board with no notation. They're just making moves and not having to write anything down. Because you usually see the very uniform, you know, make a move, press the clock, neatly
yeah,
write down your move and carry on.
yeah,
This is quite
and
nice.
you know, just look at it. They've started so quickly. They're playing so quickly that the live board didn't react. For the live board,
At all, yeah.
the game didn't even start it. So
As you said that.
really. Same for my analysis board, right? Because yeah, I don't, okay, now I'm getting the moves. So let me refresh, let me update
Yeah.
because
Richard Rapport's game is updated against Radek.
yep,
His nickname is Radek.
Radek, yeah, that's kind of a short. It's not his specifically his name. It's a short version of Radoslav
Yeah.
in Polish. So that's
Yeah, I'm assuming that it's like the first 3 letters of his first name and the last 2 letters of his last name that makes it Radek, right?
Not quite. No, seriously. Like Radek is a a little Radoslav. So it's you know, it's kind of a gentle way of you know, calling someone who is named Radoslav. Radek, idź do mnie. Something like that. Come to me. Come to me. Okay.
Please don't say that to him.
Okay. So look,
He's gonna be like, why?
I think
Yeah.
we have. So that's my analysis board. On my analysis board, we have a different game. That's Wesley Saw playing white against Domingues, and he keeps it incredibly
Okay.
solid. It was.
I would like to see that because it doesn't show up on my side, unfortunately.
Yeah. So
But
what
yeah.
happened was Queen's Gambit accepted. Bishop c4, a6, castle c5, and out of all the various moves that you have here, Wesley decided to take on c5. And that is a known line. It's not like White is just trying to make a draw. White actually tries to play it for a win. But you can imagine, it's a symmetrical structure, and this endgame is not all that promising. It's not all that promising. It's well, marginally better for White sometimes, but I think, yeah, a player as experienced as Linnea Domingues is, he has to know exactly how to equalize in such cases. For Rapport and Wojtaszek, and Rapport, we have a sideline of the G3 King's Indian, so with all the pieces on the board, with no potential for, you know, for early exchanges. I think this will be much more complex, perhaps much more entertaining game. So what, you know, Jesse, what usually, I think it's during the World Cups mostly, because you have to play kind of a mixture of classical chess, rapid chess, sometimes blitz chess, right? And then if you win, you go on and you're back to classical. I found an interesting, it's kind of an observation of mine, so that usually, well, it depends on strength of the players, but say if players are more or less evenly matched, then the one who adjusts better to the shift in the time control usually performs better. Because it's not that easy, right? You've played with classical time control, not only you have to speed up, 1.5 hours, it used to be 1.5 hours, now it's only 15 minutes, but what makes it really different is an increment. So let's say for Grishuk, it doesn't matter. I mean, if we imagine Grishuk involved in the tiebreak, right? You give him 3 hours, he would still be in a time trouble after 20 moves, right? But then when the time trouble's on, it really matters if it's half a minute increment or just 10 seconds, right? So the pace the pace of play in the time trouble is absolutely different. And yeah, usually I believe like those top players, yeah. So I believe
Sorry, what surprised me the most was in the Armageddon, White receives 5 minutes and Black receives 4 minutes, and that's normal. But after move 60, It seems they will receive 2-second increments,
Yeah, but
which I've never seen before.
no, seriously,
Is it standard?
It's kind of a common practice now to avoid, you know, a game of chess being won by not chess, you know, not chess means.
Yeah.
So imagine we have one pawn each. You have a pawn on a4 and I have a pawn on a5. You have a light square bishop, I have a dark square bishop. So it's a dead draw, deadest draw ever, right? But because of an electronic clock, you see you have, I don't know, 30 seconds and I have 20. So you'll keep playing and it doesn't matter how fast I am, you know. So to avoid situations like that, so that you'll play an absolutely, or I will play, the absolutely pointless moves chess-wise, right? Just to play on time.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense in my opinion. So it's still a huge, odds.
No dirty flags. Or pieces flying.
Or pieces flying, yeah. That's because there've been examples, you know, like people would play rook against rook simply because, you know, you can clearly see that 10 more moves and your opponent's going to lose on time.
Yeah.
Okay, it seems it
So do we have the updated
I believe
boards?
we do have some updates here. It's not that many moves were played, so knight c3, knight d7, knight d4. Well, honestly, a bit of a surprise because what usually happens in such positions, I think white was trying to get the knight to d3, so knight e5, something along these lines. Knight d3. Then depending on where the bishop goes, like if the bishop goes to a7, you go b3 and you want to give this check. If the bishop goes to d6, you play something like knight d2, you want to play knight c4, exchange the bishop. If they go b5, you'll have, I don't know, a4 immediately, or bishop f3 followed by a4, so stuff like that. So Wesley instead decided to, well, knight c3 is a very natural move, of course, right? But after knight d7, you no longer have this option of rerouting the knight to d3. So he went knight d4. Apparently, knight b3 is what he's planning later on to disturb the bishop, to figure out where the bishop goes.
And this is not a bad idea due to possible isolated pawn at all?
Ah, you mean to
or would he just take advantage of the bishop pair here?
I feel like I'll be able to break through with d5. So if knight b6, I'll play bishop g5 maybe to start with. And then I have bishop f3 and, well, I can guarantee that black won't be able to control d5. Maybe white is not breaking through with d5, but it's not like you are comfortably establishing the blockade, right? So I think he's fine with black capturing. So white's not worse for sure, right? White's not worse for sure. I don't know if white is better after black captures on d4, but same can be said about the position in general, right? White might not be better. So this knight d4, at least there is some sort of an idea to this knight d4, right? So disturb the bishop from c5 and figure out where the bishop goes. Okay, but anyway, it's not, honestly, not very inspiring, this one. It will be a very typical Wesley So-ish endgame grind. And yeah, he excels at winning games like that, but some worrisome sign, I want to say, yesterday's game of Wesley saw that, because it was typical Wesley, you know, kind of not letting his opponent any kind of initiative and slowly outplaying. And when it was already kind of, you know, the fruit was already ripe, he had just to take it, and then he let it slip. So that was a bit of a surprise. So I don't know.
It's like avocados.
Yeah.
You keep it until it's ripe, and then there's a moment where you completely forget about it, and that's when it becomes ripe. And then when you grab it and you actually want to eat it, it's too late.
It's too late, yeah. Yeah,
that's
it. That's it. Okay, for Rapid and Wojtaszek, let me try to update it. I mean, because, yes, some things happening. Well, a lot of things happen. Somehow completely missed in the opening. So what we have right now, I'm not even sure what kind of position that one is. Should be fine for black, my guess would be. But Not clear at all. So black really needs to make sure that c5 is happening in this game. Because if
It's
white...
really nice to see the knights in the center like that.
Yeah, yeah. No, but it's kind of the main strategic idea is that if white lands up knight on c5 and captures, yeah, black will capture, white captures back with the pawn. So the b7 bishop will be very, very passive. So what you want to do with black, I believe, it's trade everything in some way and play c6, c5. So apparently you cannot take on e5. That was my original intention, to start with knight takes e5, then knight e4, then something. But white has a very nice intermezzo after which he's much better, I believe. Knight c5 attacking the queen. I don't see any refutation to that. If you go queen b6, then after d takes e5, white is just much better. The bishop remains on b7. It's a very nice outpost for the knight, and also knight b7 followed by bishop c6 if black doesn't play knight d5. So that's very good for white. And if I'm playing black here, probably I have to capture on e4 first. And if bishop takes, then perhaps I can deal with it like takes and c5. And even though I lose the pawn on c5, right here, take b7, take c5, I believe in this case black will have enough compensation. So both open files, the e5 pawn is weak sometimes. Rook c2 next move after queen e3. I think in this case black has enough counterplay.
Right.
He does play rook c... no, he traded on a4 and played rook c8. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So one pair of knights are gone.
Yeah. So now the question is if he's fine after bishop d3, so that the queen will be attacked.
How do we feel about the queen on a6?
Well, they put it there voluntarily. I mean, it's the opening line which goes this way. So it's the kings in the end, they go c6, queen to b6. And after h3, which I'm not sure is the strongest move, but one of the theoretical moves, they go queen a6, targeting c4, and after b3 they play b5. So the whole point being that after this trade, the queen supports bishop b7 move, right? So otherwise some jumps like knight e5 would be very annoying. The rook is attacked with the g2 bishop, but black queen supports bishop b7.
Okay.
So it's a little bit extravagant opening line, but in fact, playable. In fact, playable.
So c5 is possible now for black, probably.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like instead of rook c8, capture in c5, or possibly even an
So
immediate
do you maybe have
c5.
to come back with the bishop, playing bishop d3 or something along those lines?
So after rook c8, I don't know, bishop d3, queen a5 maybe? Queen
And then you can come with the knight as well.
Yeah, but
Sure.
that's why I went queen a5 and not queen b6.
Pointless.
Yeah,
Right.
because queen a5, if you go knight c4, my plan was to go to the king's side.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
kind of
dangerous.
queen h5, yeah, and I'm more or less ready to push c5 next move, and somehow black pieces are lining up against white king. So one of those positions where white also has to be somewhat careful, right? Even though optically it looks very nice, the outpost on e5 and everything, but white needs to be somewhat careful. Unlike Wesley Sau's position, because I think in Wesley's game nothing bad can happen to him. I mean, he can try to play it, try to push without a single chance of losing. And I guess the clock display is absolutely off because the live board kind of frozen, so it still shows black didn't capture on d8. While in reality it's absolutely different position. Right. I believe I will have to update it manually all the time.
I can feed you the moves whenever you need.
Yeah, okay, let me switch to Wesley's game, and I guess we are up to date in my, let's say in my analysis, we are up to date. Last move
Yeah,
for
the
black
last move was knight to c5.
Knight to c5, yeah.
Yeah.
Last move being knight to c5. I have to say Wesley achieved here quite a bit. So this idea of, I'm actually not sure why the bishop didn't go to a7 this moment after knight b3. Because after bishop e7, that's what white typically wants. So to play e4, to put the bishop on e3 and f3, king f2. So this setup with pawn on f3, pawn on e4, it's called for to restrict the bishop on b7 as well as the knight on f6. So black's pieces are not ideal. Both the knight on f6 is somewhat, okay, you'll have to remaneuver it via d7, and the bishop on b7 is really silly. So knight to c5, yes, fine. But even then, white might, you know, trade. If bishop captures, don't know, maybe takes a knight a4, maybe an immediate knight a4. You can make a case for something like rook c1. So point being...
Are we worried about rook c2 at all?
You mean after knight a4?
Yeah.
I was hoping we are not. Like knight a4 takes here, rook c2, king d3, and I'll just force you to go back, right? I think b5 is the move, yeah, b5, and that's why I kind of given up on this idea of playing knight a4, because b5, and I would really love to reply to b5 with knight c5, but for this I need b4 move to be played already.
Okay.
No, but seriously, this kind of setup is in fact dangerous for black, especially if he doesn't realize the dangers. Because it looks, you know, it looks like we are playing the endgame, we are trading the pieces, everything's symmetrical, everything's good. But yeah, but if, let's say, we trade everything and we are just left with the line square bishops and the knight, yeah, and white king is on e3, like in this line, for instance. So we trade over here, and I play some silly rook c1 move, and we trade here. Oops, yeah, king e3. I believe it's not that pleasant for black, because sooner or later he might actually run out of moves, and the king is very close to a center. Like if rooks are swapped, then king d4, and even marching with the king even further.
Very true. And just to update everyone on the clocks, at the moment we're looking at Wesley So's game, and he has 9 minutes, or 9.5 minutes, and so does Domingues. Domingues didn't time out, I promise.
Yeah.
It
so
may
that's,
seem to. Yeah.
So that's once again the issue with the live board that we have.
That's all right. The clocks are difficult to sort of update, but hopefully we can get an updated board soon.
Yeah, so once again, perhaps we could remind our viewers that the winners of those tiebreaks will go to the semi-finals, right? Wesley So and Lenia Domingues are from so-called Pool D or D group, right? And the winner of this tiebreak will face Levon Aronian, the winner of the C group of the Grand Prix. And Wojtaszek or Rapport will be, once again, the winner of the other tiebreak will be paired against Hikaru Nakamura.
So do they flip the coin to see who plays which color first, or is it just random by computer?
You mean for the tiebreaks?
Yeah, so I saw in the regulations that it's selected randomly.
Selected
just
randomly.
Trying to guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think usually the coin is used. I think like 2 pawns are used usually, right?
2 pawns,
Two
okay.
pawns
So then you hold them behind your back, and then
behind your back,
you hold them in front of you.
Yeah. And the arbiter, I mean, the funny thing is that I've realized it much later, since, I mean, I've seen it for the first time. The arbiter has to show both hands when you guess. You kind of picked one of the, yeah, just to make sure that there were not 2 black pawns or 2 white pawns, right? So that's the correct procedure. That's a correct procedure. And then for the Armageddon, I believe it makes whole sense to use the coin. In fact, I still believe they use the pawns, but it makes sense to use the coin because the winner of drawing of lots The one who gets
Unless it's one of those magical coins with the same side.
yeah, no,
Either
but,
way.
you know, I mean, the winner, the guy who guesses correctly, right, white or black, it doesn't mean that he's playing that color. It means that he's the one to choose. Right.
Oh, he gets to choose.
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
in Armageddon, yeah, you get to choose which side do you prefer, and then your opponent has to accept. Okay, so a few more moves played. Oops. So what he has done, he captured on c5. But that's much more clever way. He captured on c5. Yeah, okay, we switched to the other game. I wanted to explain what Wesley saw did, but yeah, that's okay. That's okay, so knight a4, rook c6, and b4. Still slightly better for white. I claim it to be slightly better for white, this one. You can't play b5. White actually kind of threatens to play b5 himself if you, I don't know, if you, if you do not pay attention, right? b5, a b5, bishop b5 wins in exchange. So a move like knight d7 or king e7 is needed.
Okay. So you want to keep the king in the center here.
Yeah, king e7
Is rook c6 the best way to defend? Or is he trying to defend b6?
He tried to defend b. Yeah, it's played. I mean, I don't know if it was the best, but he could have gone rook c2 maybe. But yeah, that's what he done. Knight d7, king to e1. Interestingly, not to e3. Wesley goes king to e1. Still some slight pressure, perhaps. Still some slight pressure for Wesley Saw. In the other game, there've been some exchanges, and I believe by then Rapport already has solved all the opening issues, if there were any. So let me switch quickly. So what happened there? After
Probably more of a
c8,
dynamic center in Rapport's game.
c5. Swap here, swap here. Hang on, d takes c5. What's the plan is?
Oh, bishop takes maybe.
Bishop takes here, and then without a trade on d1, you immediately capture c5.
Just take on c5.
You just take on c5. Because if you trade, then rook d8 is a checkmate, right? But you take on c5.
Then probably rook a to c1 because you want to gain control of one of the files. Then if he takes on c1, you have rook takes.
Yeah.
And then your queen is always sort of controlling that diagonal as well.
Yeah, but that's. I think it still has
It
to
probably
be.
doesn't matter.
has to be kind of equalish, right? So with this material, for either side to have like serious advantage, right? It's not enough to just control the open files, but you have to invade somewhere. Like if we imagine black having the queen on f3 and the rook on a second rank, okay, black is better, right? If white all of a sudden like pushes black pieces back and then gets the rook on the 7th, then maybe white is better. But other than that, it looks fairly equal. Rook a to c1 was played instead, applying some pressure. Yeah, that's a pin on the c pawn. So you can't take on d4, for instance. End up losing material. And it didn't look that scary at first. To me, but now I'm guessing, is there a move for black? Well, Richard just played queen to f3. Okay, this is serious. My question would be,
So he played rook ac1.
Yeah, rook ac1 played and queen f3. So who is trapping whom, who is pinning whom? Because now
What happens if you take the pawn?
Yeah, look, I mean, black's c5 pawn is pinned, you cannot take, but white d4 pawn also tends to be pinned because after dc5 you trade on d1, you capture b2, and white cannot recapture back, right?
Yeah.
White cannot recapture back because d1 rook is hanging.
Right.
So that's
Oh, I see, okay.
That's a very Very tense position here. Unless there is some way of playing like Queen D3 simplifying, but then even so, look, Queen D3, let's pretend Black doesn't have anything better, he trades. Once again, a lot of pins there. So Black's C pawn is pinned on the C file, White's D pawn is pinned not only on the D file, but also on the long diagonal. So there's a lot of...
Yeah, well, someone mentions in chat as well that bishop h6 is quite flashy, and it'd be nice to take a look at a move like that.
After which move? Because now it's White to move. How do you play bishop h6 with White to move?
Oh, he did play. He played bishop a1.
White played bishop a1, protecting the bishop. Yes, it's no longer hanging if the diagonal is getting open. Bishop h6 here, I'm guessing now dc5 is possible. Because c1 rook's hanging, but so does the d7 rook. And when you trade, I just take back. Yeah, and that's better for White, because at first I thought maybe I do have this, but rook d8 intermediate check wins the game for White. So this way I'll be down a pawn, it seems. h5 makes perfect sense. h5 played, h5, h4, disturbing the White king. Also, in some cases, Black wouldn't mind having king h7, right?
So Black is the one with the tries here. Is there anything that White can do to counter this by playing h4?
h4
himself?
Yeah, maybe h4 is needed, in fact. But then it's sort of clear that the inclusion of h5 and h4 is in Black's favor, right? Maybe bishop h6 nevertheless. Tricky. It's tricky.
But also it's easy to see that the bishop's on dark square, so you want to try and keep your pawns on the opposite color.
Well,
he's offering a trade of queens.
Yeah, Wojciech went queen d3, trying to trade the queens. Yeah, if queens are off the board, then Black's idea of pushing the pawn to h4 is no longer that attractive. But once again, I don't think Black has the luxury of keeping the queens on the board of queen d3, because the question is where do you go? Where do you go? Queen d5.
b7.
Yeah, b7. I thought d5 is possible now, but maybe I'm losing. Yeah, d5 you trade, you go rook d8, you win d5. No, d5 is not a move. Yeah, maybe queen b7 would have been an alternative, but he has traded on d3.
Yeah, now there's no pressure by the queen anymore, and Radek is down to 3 minutes, and Rapport is having 6 minutes on his clock.
Yep.
Do you know much about Hikaru Nakamura's background, where he was born and when he moved to the US?
Not really. Not really. Wasn't he born in the US? I thought quite possibly, or he was...
I thought he was born in the Philippines, unless that was Wesley So. I know there's a top player that was born in the Philippines and moved to the US.
That was Wesley So, but that's absolutely different story. Like Wesley, I remember him playing for Philippines, so he moved like maybe 15 years of age. And Hikaru, he was either born in the US or like, yeah, chat would know for sure, right? But I think
he was born in Japan. Hirokata.
So he was born in Japan, yeah, but yeah, that's correct. But he was moved to like early years, right? Like maybe he was 2 or 3 years of age. I mean, somehow that's what maybe that's a false memory, but I think, yeah. So Hikaru, he always, in my mind at least, he was always American, right? Obviously, the name suggests that he is of some...
And the accent.
Yeah, has some Japanese kind of a real heritage, let's call it this way, right? But it always felt like he's an American. And for Wesley, I still remember him being already, maybe not a top chess player, but being a chess player, maybe being a Grandmaster, and he was representing Philippines. So it's a different story.
Sorry, I lack my chess general knowledge. I need to work on it, chat. I need to work on it. But back to the game, we have h4 on the board.
Yeah, well, I said h4 is no longer that attractive, but Richard plays it anyway. So h4, I thought, you know why I said not attractive? I thought h4, g4. And then, you know, I no longer care that much about my king being somewhat, my king's position being somewhat weakened. And the pawn on the dark square, the h4 pawn, is potentially, if we ever get to play the bishop's ending, it's potentially a target, a weakness. So I thought h4, g4, this inclusion would not be in black's favor. And not to mention that one of the options is to take on h4. Sometimes people tend to forget that those rook pawns you can actually take. Like you go h5,
Yeah,
h4.
the option just doesn't come across. It just doesn't cross my mind because I'm already thinking, okay, it's going to be isolated and doubled, and you know my pawn structure is done for. But he did end up taking.
Yeah, gh4.
He took.
Rook to d5. Okay, rook to d5. So well, maybe opting to play rook h5, but also protecting the c5 pawn so that he can go rook c8 to d8. So here, rook c8 to d8 would lead, yeah. If you do so immediately, rook c5 is possible, right? Rook takes c5 is possible. Now after rook d5, let's pretend white done something like king g2. After rook d8, you can no longer take on c5 because I trade the rooks and take on d3. Okay, on b4.
B4
Look,
is interesting.
so many pins, as I said. I mean, so many pins. b4, yeah. The c pawn is pinned, and he kind of highlights it once again. So c4 is the only move.
So the pins are going both ways.
yeah. c4 is the only move, I believe.
Yeah.
c4 is the only
That's
move.
what was played, and you played rook a3.
Uh-huh.
So c4 and rook a3 were played.
c4 and rook a3 is on the board, right? a7 is attacked. So now the question is, I don't think black is playing for a win here, to be honest. It's double, it's isolated, but that's an extra pawn on the h file, right? Plus white attacks a7. So if we agree on black not playing for the win, then the question is black comfortable making a draw after bishop d4? Maybe he is, right? Takes on a7, and then he goes c3. And this should be a draw. c3, c2 is the threat, so I capture on e7. Now c2, I still have rook e1.
Oh, coming back, right.
Yeah, and it's not very pleasant for white, but I believe he should be able to make a draw. We'll see. Yeah, he captures on d4, rook takes a7, so they've entered this line. They've entered this line, rook takes a7, and I don't know, maybe black can try to keep the pawn, the e pawn, by going e6. Going e6, not... Oh no, c3 is on the board. Yeah, so once again, for some reason I've managed to
Okay,
guess.
so he's giving up the pawn. Maybe they're just happy.
To guess
draw.
the whole sequence correctly. And now the b pawn is gone because you can't really afford a3 because of the c2. It will cost you, the c pawn will cost you a rook. So you really need to be careful with white now. You need to capture e7. Let me check. So c2, threatening rook d1. Rook to e1 is strictly only move. Strictly only move. Oh, wait a second. I thought I will take and then white will get some time and maybe make a draw. But now that I'm looking at it, how about rook d2 with the idea to play rook d8 with the idea to play rook d1? Ah, no, that's nonsense. I just push the pawn, rook d8, and I play rook f1. Or king f1 for that matter. Just to make sure that the rook on e1 is protected, right? And then rook d1, I can simply take the pawn. Yeah, so that was very silly. rook takes b4, yeah, correct. Ah, wait, c2, king f1, rook b4. Okay, makes sense. It's got to be a draw. I don't think
Well,
white...
the king's coming in.
Ah, you mean king reaching to the c pawn? Did he play king e2? Yeah,
King e2.
he did. Yeah, he did. He played
Oh, sorry,
king
I keep
e2.
forgetting that the two boards are different, but we have a similarly, probably symmetrical structure over on the other game. Wesley So versus Domingues. They both have a bishop and a knight with the same pawns as well.
Wesley and okay, so they've also advanced much further. Yeah, right. This is something very similar to what I was talking about. So that white is trying to trade all the pieces and try to make sure that black pieces are passive. The b7 bishop, the f6 knight, but black has taken his time, and the knight from f6 where it was restricted. Now it's on d4, right? The bishop, well, still not very active, but acceptable, I would say. So it does look completely drawish to me. It does look completely drawish. I don't think anything major will happen. So out of the two, I would argue Wojtaszek's game is a little bit sharper.
Yeah, we can go back.
Yes, so Wojtaszek...
Somehow the engine likes black ever so slightly. Probably because of the passed pawn and that the only counterpart is on a3 and not at all pushed.
Well, you probably lose the c pawn, you win the a3 pawn in return, and because of this slightly better structure, maybe that's why. That would be my guess, because how do you keep the c pawn alive? I'm not sure. Like, white can play king d2 right now, and that's what he's done. King d2, I'm planning to take, right? So if rook c4, okay, that does exist. You protect c2 pawn for now, but the least I can do is just to push the a pawn. So a4, if you don't take, I go a5, a6, distract one of the rooks. The moment you take the a pawn, I take the c pawn. So that should be good enough for a draw, I'm asking myself, because maybe it's a bit too hasty what I'm saying. You'll trade, you'll give a check, you'll take on f2. That's certainly not the endgame I want to defend, being on seconds. Yeah. He has to look for a better way. And Rapport makes some annoying moves, like, you know, rook f4 switching to the other wing. Rook f4, so now if you play f3, well, the connection between the rook on the third rank and the h3 pawn is kind of breaks, right? If you play f3, and then h3 pawn will not be possible to defend. Yeah, still somewhat annoying for white.
So, if I may ask, do players start the second round at the same time as well? So if one group of players will end early, they have to wait?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
At least that's how it's always been. So after the longer game finishes, you have this 10 minutes or 15 minutes break. I hope it'll be 10 minutes. Right. So
yeah, and Radek...
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, nothing too important.
Radek is now down to 50 seconds. And okay, they still have a 10-second increment, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's a good part about this increment, right? So I was complaining yesterday that sometimes there are certain positions where it seems that one of the sides can go forever, but at the same time, even in rapid, having this 10 seconds increment prevents some really silly, silly losses on the clock. Okay, it's official. It's a draw for Wesley So and Lenier Domingues in game 1. So game 2 will start after the whole round's finished, right? After Wojtaszek and Rapport will finish as well, and after the 10 minutes break. In the second game, Domingues will have the white pieces. would still be very, very hard, I believe. He'll play e4, Wesley will play e5, and then either the Petrov or the Berlin. It's really hard to beat
By
Wesley.
the way you were talking,
yeah.
I had in my mind that both of them had finished. And so I opened the game and I was like, did I miss the second result? But I didn't. They're still playing, and I saw
they're still
the
playing,
moves
of course. Yeah,
coming, yeah.
They're still playing, of course. Richard bringing the king over. So the king is on g5 already. The king is on g5 already. He's, I think he can force a draw now, right? By giving a check on the d file. Doesn't matter which rook gives a check, rook d5 or rook d8. Rook d5, okay. So give checks when the king hides on wherever it hides on f2, then you go back to c5 perhaps. It's not that he wants to make a draw. I believe he's trying to play this one for a win. He tries to play this one for a win. So where the kings go, in king e3.
Was it a blunder?
Which one? Oh, you mean now it's problematic for white, or? Ah, yeah, so he gives this check and... Whoa. That king runs to g3 and you can play rook e2 threatening a checkmate in
The
one,
other rook,
right?
and then...
Yeah.
Oh, I was looking... Oh, that's a mate as well. Now he has rook... I'm not sure.
Wow.
Can he stop this? He probably has like f4 check or something.
f4 check or h4 check, yes. But still very problematic, right? I mean, he kind of misplaced both rooks, because that's about the time to... That was about the time to give a check with one of the rooks on the 5th rank, but there is no check. So now rook d3 is a checkmate in one move threat. Rook a3 apparently loses to 2 checks. Rook g2, other rook to f2, and then rook takes f4. Rook b2 was played, but that's rook d3, no? King h4, and
rook d3.
Is he trying to say that this king survives? No, g5 is a checkmate, yeah, of
no!
course. G5.
It's over! Oh,
yeah.
No!
So that's a big one, of course, because
wow.
A win in a mini match of 2 games, a win with black, you know, winning first game with black is massive, absolutely massive. The thing is, Rapport perhaps is not the right guy to claim that he can easily make a draw with white, right? I mean, he's very creative, he's very kind of a fighting player, original style and so on, but I would not describe him as very solid player. So maybe Wojtaszek still has a chance. So yeah, but that's a big result, of course, for the tiebreak in this group, and makes Rapport, of course, a huge favorite. All right, so between 2 games, as we established, there will be 10 to 15 minutes break. And it will be as well a break for us. But before that, let me once again remind you, dear viewers, that World Chess Grand Prix 2022 is made possible by partnership with Kaspersky, cybersecurity partner of FIDE and World Chess, with Algorand, the blockchain partner, and FIDE Online Arena. Those are the sponsors, the partners of the tournament in Berlin, as well as the whole Grand Prix series. So we'll make a quick break and we'll come back on air just a couple of minutes before the second game of the tiebreak starts. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Berlin, to the tiebreak days after the round-robin qualification. Game 2 is about to start in both tiebreak matches. Quick reminder, Wesley So made the draw against Domingues, so the score is equal there. And Richard Rapport, after winning first game with black, is now a clear favorite in his mini-match against Radoslav Wojtaszek. So winning with black and having white in the second game when you only need a draw is, of course, a dream scenario, but that's tiebreak. That's
very advantageous.
Yeah, you know, that's tiebreak, that's rapids we are talking about. So anything is still possible. I remember myself losing with white after winning with black, and vice versa, kind of winning with black on demand when it was needed. So I believe anything can happen. All right, so the Sicilian with bishop b5 check, and Radoslav, I want to claim, was almost forced to go knight d7. Knight d7 is not a bad move, of course, but much more solid, much more reliable would be bishop to d7, but that gives white the possibility to simplify the game. And that's the luxury he doesn't have. He plays with black, by kind of the unwritten rules, you first have to equalize, but the tournament situation says you have to avoid all the lines with simplification. So that's obviously not an easy...
You have to avoid time trouble.
Yeah, not an easy situation to be in. It's not an easy situation.
Indeed, and we have my favorite opening between Domingues and Wesley So.
Which is Gioco Piano.
Gioco. Okay, I had to remember how you pronounced it, Gioco Piano.
Yep.
Forever I've been calling it the Gueco
really?
Piano.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yes.
I mean, you could name it Italian with D3, and that would also work.
True. So wait, what sort of structure do we have in Rapport's game? Do we have like a Richter-Rauser, but also
yes,
combination of like a Maroxian bind? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yes and no.
Yes and no. Yeah, it's a bishop b5 line, and then d4 and queen d4 a6. Swap here, c4, and I think kind of the main line, once again, if I'm allowed to talk about main lines, because I'm not very good at theory of this particular opening. I think what they do, they try to avoid bishop g5 pin. So they play e5, hang on, how is that? e5, queen d3, and h6. So it's kind of d5 is the crucial square here, and if you play knight f6, so that bishop g5 happens, white is planning to trade the knight and then gets his own knight to d5. Yeah. What happened here in our game? He allowed bishop g5, went e6, knight c3, h6, bishop h4, and it went further on. Bishop e7, e5, breaking in the center, capturing with the knight. I think what Richard Rapport does is actually very clever. So, blasting the center open.
Does he really win a piece if black castles? I don't know.
Not really, apparently, right?
Because if you take, bishop takes, queen takes d7.
Bishop takes, you actually risk end up somewhat worse, I believe. Bishop takes e5, and it'd be an endgame with bishop versus knight. Now, I think if black castles, one thing that you can do, you could probably play rook d1 or just castle long. I'd say, or, well, alternatively this, you can trade on d7, trade on e7. And losing this with white would require a lot of effort, I have to tell you.
Okay.
I mean, it's such an easy game to play. You castle, you put one rook to d1, the other rook to e1, everything in the center, you know. So that's super reliable, super safe position.
There's a question from chat. How do you pronounce Richard Rapport's opponent's name?
Wojtaszek? Radoslav? Wojtaszek.
Radoslav
I think,
Wojtaszek.
yeah, I
Okay.
think it's sh rather than ch, and I believe both of those, both of those are not very, very common in English, right? So, whenever you,
Wojtaszek.
yeah, I would give an advice that whatever you are comfortable with, will probably do, right? I mean, I can't be that picky having a name, Miroshnichenko, you know. So,
So easy to say. But
yeah,
okay, I think it's also somewhat part of our job description that we'd have to pronounce the names of the players correctly.
yeah, right. Yeah, right. It's not the worst, right? The name of world title challenger is particularly challenging if we are talking full name, right? Full family name. Jan
Jan
Nepomniachtchi.
Nepomniachtchi.
Yeah. So,
Nepomniachtchi.
yeah, that's
I thought it was Ian actually for the longest time, and then someone told me no, it's Jan.
yeah. And your favorite opening, let's quickly check what goes on here. What goes on here? Yeah, that's very confusing. I mean, that is very, very confusing.
What is confusing?
Those positions. So queen to d, for instance, I do not understand those really. Like why, for instance, queen d7 and not. I believe he wants to sacrifice on h3 in the right moment, right? So
Okay.
queen d7 and not queen queen c8. Perhaps you're running into
I was
knight
looking
f5.
at Queen
Yeah.
f6.
Queen f6.
Oh, I see.
Queen f6. Yeah,
Maybe it's not so good.
Maybe, but he apparently has a different idea. So he wants to capture on h3 if he's allowed. And after knight f5, he says queen on d7 is better than the queen on c8. Yeah, because white seems like white's practically forced to go knight f5. I mean, he can try this as well. Take on e5, trade the queens, but then is it really better for white? I don't think. Yeah, bishop takes. Knight e5 tactic doesn't lead us anywhere, right? Knight h3, black is better. Knight h3 and then recapture the knight. And other than that, what do you do? I mean, bishop e3 probably to swap the bishop from a7, but that's an empty position, I think. Yeah, black is more than happy. So knight f5 is, of course, challenging. Yeah. Now it's...
You're threatening to win the pawn on e5.
Yeah, that's one thing. Well, f7, f6 played relatively quickly. Okay. So now one thing you can do, you can try to push the h-pawns. You go h4, not necessarily with the idea to go h5, but you want to play g3 to get rid of this f4 knight, yeah, to disturb it. And an immediate, after f6, an immediate g3 is not that great because h3 will be taken. Even this you can consider sometimes because king g2, the knight's hanging. If the knight has to go to g5, you have double capture. I don't know, maybe bishop takes followed by knight takes. That's also quite sharp. And in all those lines, you know, one of the very typical ideas sort of materializes. The fact that black has the Daskva bishop on a7, white played d4, and he keeps the pawn on d4. So if anything opens on the king side, the bishop is somewhat offside, the bishop on a7, right? If we compare like white's Daskva bishop on c1, it's pointed towards the king side, and the bishop on a7 kind of blocked with the d pawn, not doing all that much. So maybe even g3, g4, g2, g3 immediately. G4 is nonsense. G3 immediately might be an idea to try. Because black is forced to take. Knight h5 looks just terrible, right? The knight's hanging in the air. If white doesn't have anything direct, he can just play king g2.
He can take on e5, no? Oh, but then taking
Yeah,
on...
he might,
Oh,
yeah,
maybe.
but some g3 will be hanging. I think in such situations...
But you're attacking the queen, maybe.
But how do you want to do this? Take on e5 immediately?
Like this? Maybe.
Yeah, okay. I mean, why would you need to calculate all those tactical sequences when I know for sure that after knight h5, king g2, it's very hard for black. I mean, it's nothing is
Because it
hanging.
looks fancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Bishop e3 makes sense. Okay. Bishop e3, developing, protecting d4 once again, having some tricks like that. If the rook goes to d8, there is d5. Attacking a7, attacking e6, right? White wins a piece. Maybe, I don't know, c takes and then d takes e4. Bishop e3 is certainly possible, and I'm a little bit surprised with how much time Wesley So has. Because if anything, I would think,
15 minutes.
yeah, White's position looks very attractive by this line standards, right? White at least achieved something. And then I look at the clock and I understand Wesley kind of blitzed it all out. So that's normally suggests that he's prepared to enter this line. I mean, he was prepared to enter this line. And that is a bit confusing. I mean, I don't see why, or rather what is so good about Black's position.
Yeah, perhaps maybe he went in trusting his gut and he's like, you know what, I'm just going to play faster. And here he is.
Yeah, but you know, let's not forget it's a rapid time control, but it's still chess, right? It's not a bullet game. It is very often in the bullet game. It doesn't matter what you play as long as you play fast and don't blunder heavily. And here, still kind of getting good position out of the opening matters a great deal. So you can speed up later, and that's what we see. That's what Grishuk does in classics, in fact. Once again, Grishuk already...
There's so many...
No,
There's so many positions out of the Joko piano that I've never seen before. Something I would just not expect. I mean, I'd expect the C3 and D4 and so on, but we're always getting structures that are not common. Or perhaps you've seen them a lot, but I definitely haven't.
But that's once again, that's a very, very common conflict, so to speak, in the position. So White has the knight on f5, Black has the knight on f4, and then it can end up being literally anything, right? Sometimes Black would take, you know, go knight e7. Okay, in this case, it's a terrible position. This he simply cannot do because White takes and gets the e6 square. That's a very important difference. That you've committed to play f7, f6. Yeah, so after rook e6, it's just a terrible position. But
that's a cozy spot for the rook.
Yes, yeah. Sometimes this bishop f5 would work. Sometimes, once again,
I have
you would...
question.
Yeah.
I have a question about the current position. So what if king to h2, and you're protecting h3, then you can go
and then you go g3.
g3.
Yeah, that's also one of the ideas. It's just that bishop e3 was played, so it's Black to move, right?
Okay.
So it is a plan, yeah. And sometimes they take it even further, you know. You go king h2 sometimes, and the knight is not on f5. So after king h2, the pawn is still hanging. So what you do, you go king h2 and then knight to g1 to protect the h3 pawn twice. And then you go g3 and then return the knight. So it's a kind of, yeah, I don't know how to do it. Yeah, like for instance, let's imagine those are serious moves. King h2, king h8, and to illustrate, right? You cannot play g3 straight away because h3 is hanging. So one of the ways to do it would be to go knight g1, protect h3, and play g3, kick the knight, then return your knight back.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, the thing is, of course, that after knight e7, White will find something better to do. Probably trade here might be an idea. Trade here.
But then you have to let go of this g3 idea.
Yeah, but
it's not really needed.
it's like it's different because now I'll switch perhaps to something like that. Queen. I'm not sure. Knight h4 sometimes. knight h4. That like trying to land the knight on f5, right?
Yeah.
Not only that, but attack the f4 pawn first. Hope that
I know
you
it looks
play.
strange, but with black
Yeah.
e5.
Sorry.
Sorry, I know it looks strange, but would black play g5?
Yeah, g5, knight f5. Then I'm very happy with this position once again. Oops.
Probably taking.
I
Yeah.
take on f5. Yeah, gotcha. So this, I captured on f4. Right. So you invite me to go to f5. You take it, but once again the e6 square. Right. So it's not that much about the opposite colored bishops. It's about white having much better bishop than black. Right, so bishop on c2, it's not even that easy to describe why it's better, because both seem to be blocked, like f5 pawn blocks the c2 bishop for now, right? But the fact that the rook is on e6, and any time you take on e6, you open the diagonal for myself. So just go queen d3, I play rook e1 next, and black can never capture on e6, because f e6 and white's practically winning. So that's what makes those positions very tricky, because, you know, it seems we are doing the same, black exchanges on f5, white exchanges on f4, and all of a sudden white is better. And sometimes it's vice versa, so that you do the same and black ends up being better. But yeah, Wesley is not very happy after this bishop e3. He has already spent quite some time, which, by the way, suggests that your theory of him just playing moves fast without really knowing what he was doing might be right.
Well, he has spent 6 minutes in a rapid game on move 17.
Yep.
And perhaps he is just finding a plan to go forward, and the rest of his moves would obviously then just follow.
Yeah, but what's the plan? I mean, the problem is this. The problem is that it's not clear what he's going to do.
Yeah, all the pieces are still on the board. No trades have been made yet.
Yeah, some sort of d5 sometimes is the move in such positions. Like kind of pay attention that after d5, like c pawn, c6 pawn supports the d5 pawn, f6 pawn supports the e5 pawns. Black kind of building up the huge pawn center, and then you can imagine how tense it's going to be. Like it's not clear who will have to take in the center, who will release the tension. Yeah, that's a very, very, you know, not maybe sharp, but very rich position. So a lot of opportunities. Let's check the other game, maybe. Maybe let's check the other game.
Yeah, it looks like a dangerous draw, because of course Radek does not want to draw.
Whoa. It's a lot of moves being played. White to move, can capture f6, win the pawn temporarily. Right, then what, rook? He doesn't do it. He goes rook to e4. That's an interesting move. Rook e4, what's this rook e4?
Yeah.
What's rook e4? Like to put it on f4, to put it on g4 maybe. Other option would be to go b4, a4, something. Yeah, I don't think a player like Richard Trappert can lose this one, but we've seen surprises. We've seen surprises here and there, so still not over. Still not over. So after 95, that was the last moment we've seen this position. Queen c7 happened, and then everything was traded on d7 and a castle long king c6. And so on and so on. b5, knight d5, some tricks. Swapped on f6, swapped on d8, swapped on b5, rook e4. Okay, brilliant. A little bit.
What do you think is going through Radoslav's mind right now?
I don't No, I don't think that much. I think he just plays the position, the one that is currently on the board. Okay, A4 by Richard Rapport. So he wants to liquidate the last pawn, the last black pawn on the queen side, right? So BA4, Rook A4, and then kind of the worst that can happen, you will have 4 versus 3, even if you somehow lose the B pawn. Still not entirely comfortable, I want to say. So now, for instance, you can, or you could try to play F5 like this. White probably trades, King B5 has to leave the 4th rank. But yeah, but maybe that's just too solid. Rook E2, F3, Bishop F2, yeah. Okay, this happened, F5 played, A B5, King B5.
F5.
Yeah, F5 played, yeah, the rook's hanging, but nothing stops you from going to E2, playing F3, Bishop F2, kind of making sure that everything's solid. Honestly, it's less and less chance for Richard Rapport to misplay it, and therefore it's less and less chance for Wojtaszek to.
I'd love to know your thoughts on Wesley's last move, because he did spend, I think it was about 6 or 7 minutes to play King to H8.
Aha, so he
so
went,
2 moves ago, yeah.
He went King H8.
Yep.
And that is a little bit, I want to say a little bit surprising, because, well, very often it would be, King H8 would be a useful move, right? So some pins won't happen, some checks won't happen, but once again, it doesn't look like a clear solution to the problems that he has. So DE5, FE5 happens, so now D6 pawn is kind of hanging, knight G5, yeah, well, Domingues' position looks better. Believe it or not.
Apparently, Wesley's King H8 move gave Domingues a 0.1 advantage. And since then, he's played accurate moves, including taking on E5 and also knight to G4. So you're probably about to tell us about the plan, but I interrupted you. Please continue.
Yeah, that's good. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit puzzled why not D takes E5, why FE5, leaving himself. Yeah, it's more of a counterplay on the F file, I understand, but D6 pawn is weak, right? So here, perhaps worth mentioning that if I capture on A7, Rook A7, well, this is not wrong, but I cannot take on D6. That's the whole thing, right? Because Queen D6, Bishop F5, and then when you trade on D7, Bishop takes back, runs away. If Knight take D6, something bad's going to happen on the king's side, like Bishop H3. Don't know. You don't want to figure out what happens after Knight D6. Yeah, Bishop H3 looks scary. Knight G2 looks scary. So Knight G5, very clever. Intending to trade. Now perhaps threatening to take on D6 as well after some exchanges. And also G3 becomes a thing, because knight on G5 also protects the H3 pawn. So G3 is a threat sometimes. Let's put it this way. Yeah, an unpleasant position for Wesley So. I believe we have to stay with this game because, look, Wesley spends more and more time on last 2-3 moves. He has spent already 10 minutes. And if he keeps the pace like that, let's not forget it's a rapid game, so he'll be in huge time trouble after 3 more moves or something like that. And for Rapport and Wojtaszek, let's keep an eye on their game at the background. If something exciting starts to happen, if we really think Wojtaszek has a chance to come back, then we will switch, right? But that for those who missed
both boards open at the same time.
That's good. But for our viewers, I just want to say once again, so Rapport won game 1, and in game 2, that's kind of a quiet end game maybe with some potential still for an error from both sides, but nothing too exciting. And here we have all the pieces on the board. It's very sharp, and well, now thanks to Jesse, we also know that it's supposed to be good for white. Yeah.
Always
D5
giving away
play.
the analysis. Yeah.
D5. What do we do after D5? I guess trade on A7 would not hurt. I just want black rook to be on A7, you know, so that the rooks are not connected, so that sometimes maybe the rook on A7 is even kind of loose. Can be attacked with the queen. I don't know from which square. Don't ask me. But yeah, bishop A7, rook A7. I would probably play, and then see what I can do in terms of maybe playing G3, forcing the knight away. Alternatively, what else? Queen G4 is. I'm not sure where it goes, but it's kind of a move that can be played. Just bring in the queen.
I was looking at
into a
G3,
zone.
but I wasn't sure how good that is.
Yeah,
I know it was good earlier.
G3, I think it's DE4 is what we have to answer. D4, and then the F5 knight starts to be hanging, right? And then it's not clear, like you trade the queens, the knight's hanging in the air. If you take on E6, then queen takes, once again F5 knight's hanging, H3 pawn is hanging as well. It might as well be that this position is very good. I don't know. Like bishop E4, if rook F5, you take the rook and then the knight. Actually here, I have a strong feeling that I had to trade, you know, had to trade on A7 first, seriously. Why do we need the bishop on E3? We don't, right? So trade first and then go G3. So the knight is trapped. Black probably has to enter this line. And then we take on E6. Then we take on E6. I think white's much better. So your idea is, perhaps it's just right to go G3, but maybe we need to take on A7 first. So my point is, now we take E4, and here black is not
And rook
forced
takes
to... Yeah, rook takes... I thought that's the main difference, that now we have a check on D8 first. Now we have a check on D8 first, like forcing the knight to go back, and also the rook is kind of locked on A7 there, and then we take. And then we take, there's no perpetual, white's just winning. So apparently there is kind of a other way for black, like you can play knight D5, at least you are not resigning immediately, but there is a little doubt that white is better in the resulting position. That would be quite a turn if all of a sudden the tiebreak. I was prepared for today to go all the way to Armageddon. So if it resolves in rapid, I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised.
I'm in tears right now. I was listening to your analysis, but I was also sort of got one eye on the chat, reading chat, and I'm just in stitches from their level of humor today. It must be because it's Friday and everyone's in a good mood.
Okay, so nice. They're talking nice things? Really?
Yeah, they're making jokes about my surname, but it's funny and I'm laughing, so having a great time.
Wow. Okay, so he traded on E6, still not too
But they were
late.
also talking about the engine moves, and they said that your suggestion of what was the move that you mentioned? Bishop takes A7 was one of the top engine moves. So Miro 1.0 engine is definitely doing a good job.
Well, but that's not, you know, thanks for the kind words, but that's not out of this world move. I mean, trading the bishop for the bishop, and you kind of realize that your opponent's rook position is not very good on A7, right? So it's not that hard to add 2+2 in this case. But yeah, but if the whole line works, if now let's say G3 and white's better, then yeah, then we are doing great. All right. Meanwhile, Wojtaszek is a pawn up, against Rapport. I don't think he has a realistic chance of winning, but you never know. I mean,
They have the same color bishops, but also the double pawns probably.
Yeah, double pawns, pawns on the dark squares, all of them. But still, how did he end up being down a pawn? So after rook e2, black has played e5, f3, bishop g1. And he decided not to play, so he goes here, he goes here. It was his choice. Okay, it was his choice to enter this position. Bishop f2, bishop takes h2, and rook to d2. Made sure that the rooks are getting traded. King c4, yeah. Honestly, it is somewhat scary. It is somewhat scary. If I'm Rapport, I'm not entirely comfortable here. King e2, I thought. But then you can probably go to b3. There is one little trick that I was thinking. If bishop b8, trying to provoke f6, then attack f6, and we win one of the pawns, you have e4, right? And if white takes, you have f3 and win the bishop. It's just that somewhere around this point, one has to consider all the various fortresses that are possible in this position, like king d3. Now if you take b2, it's king e4, White's apparently fine. And instead, you know, you have to look at stuff like, no, maybe you don't have to look at anything. Nah, not anymore. No, I thought, you know, still some pawn breaks, f5, h5, but white's much better coordinated. Yeah, maybe that's all nonsense.
You know,
maybe...
chat.
Yeah, tell me.
Chat is requesting an impromptu story time, but I think it definitely needs to be, you know, nudged with a question or perhaps a suggestion of a scenario.
No, honestly, I don't think that the tiebreak day is the day for the stories. You chat will have to come back tomorrow where we will have only 2 classical games. Only 2, imagine.
I'm sure you have stories for days.
Yeah, but we'll have kind of proper atmosphere. We'll have only 2 classical games. Inevitably, there will be a moment where in both games they are thinking for half an hour, and we will have to fill gaps. And now it's packed with action. Why some silly mirror stories when we can watch chess? Queen g4. Look, he decided against g3. He went queen g4, but once again, that makes a lot of sense. Queen f6 and rook a to d1. I like the way
they're saying your smile is priceless.
Wow. meaning there is no smile or what?
They appreciate your
I rarely
smile,
in fact, yeah. I rarely smile.
Yes, that's what we see.
After rook a d1.
All right, please continue.
What's he supposed to do? I mean, we were looking at g3 a couple of moves ago, Jesse, right? He didn't do it just yet, but the feeling is like the moment he plays g3, it will be a kind of an absolutely winning move. So the thing now is g3 is still too early because h5. That's how it feels. Or maybe it's just wrong, what I'm saying. Yeah, we'll have to leave. You'll take h3 with a check. But what's then? h5's hanging with a check. Maybe knight f4. Okay, maybe black just sacrifices a piece and he's good here. Yeah, quite possibly because king is too weak. Anyway, I like what Domingues does. So bringing all the pieces, rook a to see it, because we are shown the camera view. Domingues clearly concentrated full on the position. No, we don't have such information. Yeah, queen f3 being the last move, according to what we've seen. Yeah, Wesley's the move. Both of them are pretty low on time. Less than 2 minutes for Wesley. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, I believe it's 5 minutes for Wesley So and 2 minutes for Domingues, but I might be wrong. Yes, I was very wrong. So when I fast forwarded the moves, it didn't update automatically. It's a minute 48 for Wesley
Yeah,
and 2.5 minutes for Domingues. You're right.
Queen g5 and Queen g3 is played now. So now he is ready to trade the queens. If black captures, white will take with the pawn. So it's now this knight on f4 is kind of the last hope for black. If this knight's forced away from f4, white will be just winning. But can he do something with this knight? That's a big question. Now you can try Queen e3, kind of winning a tempo, but still you can't play. Maybe that's the moment. Maybe that's the moment you go h4. In fact, in this position, maybe that's the moment you go h4 with white. So you go h4, and then either Queen g5 followed by g3, or Queen e3 with the tempo attacking the rook if black somehow doesn't do anything. Queen e3 attacking the rook, and then play g3.
I'd be very surprised if Domingues makes it through the tiebreaks to the semifinals.
Really? Why is that?
I would. I would. For the longest time, I've been a long-time supporter of Wesley So, and I haven't really heard much about Domingues. So for me, it's like unfamiliar. It's my first sort of introduction to his chess and so on. I know he's been around for a while. I know he's a very esteemed player. But I don't know. I guess I'm just rooting for Wesley.
Okay. So king h2 instead of h4. Okay, also makes sense. So now king will be, as we discussed, king will be protecting h3, right? And then the same trick that he's threatening queen e3 with the tempo followed by g2, g3. And seriously, it's harder and harder finding good moves for black, because you don't want to be taking on e4. That simply kind of defines this. Rook a8 is what he played. Yeah, the rook was certainly not very well placed on a7, has to return. And both of them pretty low on time. Once again. How about the other game? Is it still in progress, Jesse? It is. It is.
Yeah.
And what's going on?
3v3.
What's going on? I think
I
Rapport...
don't think he wants to accept defeat.
Wait a second.
Radek wants to push.
Wait a second. No, I was... I looked at the camera view first, and I've confused the pieces. I thought it's the bishop on e1 and the king on d6. So I thought black is winning the piece by going f2 on the next move. But here, it's not much to do. I mean, e5 should make a draw immediately, I believe. After bishop e3. Is e5 an immediate draw? You just get rid of one more pairs of pawns, and bishop f4 makes a draw after that. You take on f6, you go king f2, you win the f pawn, and the remaining h pawn, you know, is not of, kind of the bishop is of a wrong color. So the dark square bishop and the f pawn, and the h pawn do not win. So e5 should be good enough for a draw, even though he didn't play it similarly. I don't see what he has done. Maybe he doesn't need maybe he doesn't need e5. Bishop c5. That's something, honestly, something that I would not consider, to be honest. It
Yeah,
might
probably
work.
just to trade and then give away
Yeah,
the b pawn for the f pawn and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Or to force the bishop away and go king f2. So that's the most forcing move. But I would be just lazy calculating this pawn endgame. Maybe there's ups. No, not b5. I mean, I misclicked it terribly. So takes here, needs to be taken. King f2. Oops.
Yeah.
So f2 was played. f2 is weird. f2 is weird. King c5. I can still take on f2, so it doesn't really make any difference.
Maybe it's the same thing.
Yeah, it doesn't make any difference. And you can't do much. Yeah, king e5, and white goes king e3, and it's a draw, agreed, official. And Richard Rapport, after, well, first of all, a very important and a very tough win yesterday against Fedoseev with black. Richard Rapport makes it to the semi-final to be paired with Hikaru Nakamura. And we are left.
Congratulations
Yeah,
to Richard.
we are left with
AKA
only one.
Samson.
with only one game, and look what happens. I mean, that's crazy. They've ruined the position entirely. I don't know who is winning, what's going on. Because yes, it looks very dangerous for the white king, right? King being on h1, like black pieces being right next to the king. But also, Domingues has a very dangerous battery, the bishop on c2, the queen on d3. So now, doesn't matter where the knight from g2 goes, it will be taken by the e4 rook. Any move, like knight e1, rook e1, knight h4, rook h4, and queen h7 checkmate will be a huge threat. So now the question is...
So you have to play something like rook f5?
But then
or not even?
Rook e2 perhaps picks the knight, right? So it's kind of a double attack, or whatever we call it. Could it be that, well, Domingues just outsmarted Wesley so? Because, yeah, I don't see the move.
Seems like it.
I don't see the move, really.
Wow.
That's...
Literally in 1 minute, this is what we got. Could we go back a few moves? Just to see how we got here?
Yeah, so king h2, queen f3 was played, and then knight h4. Okay, they've swapped here. ed5, and knight takes g2. I don't know, seriously.
Oh, wow.
It seems like he didn't blunder this, because he went queen d3, a threat of
Things
checkmate in 1, e4, rook takes e4, this...
Oh.
Okay, king h1, g6. How's that? Rook takes h. He went h4, and the game's finished, right? The game's finished. They're discussing.
But we can see the ending. Yeah.
So he went knight h4, rook takes h4. He kind of panicked. Yeah, g6 and rook takes h5, and it's a forced checkmate, and it is Lenier Domingues who is the winner. He knocks out Wesley So, but Wesley has to blame himself. Maybe not on today's tiebreak, but not winning the absolutely winning position yesterday. He could have been in the semifinals. He could have had a rest day. But yeah, brilliant play by Lenier Domingues. First winning on demand yesterday against Shirov, and then today winning a tiebreak against Wesley So. To my surprise...
But Wesley is always a gentleman about losing. No, Wesley So, he would stay, he would chat about the game, he would be very calm, and good sportsmanship, really. I mean, from all of the players, but mainly as well from Wesley. I mean, a lot of the players who have lost their games would just sort of quietly set up the pieces and just walk off and say, listen, I'm not doing interviews, goodbye.
Right, so we will have an interview, I believe, first with Richard Rapport, possibly with both players from the first tiebreak, and then, of course, with Domingues and Wesley So.
The semi-finals. Give us your take on the two games, your sensations at that moment, and your expectations for the match, semi-finals.
Okay, I was just unexplainably lucky just to get to play today. Yeah, I mean, basically, Radek should have probably won the tournament like around to spare or something, and instead he also, like last game, he was winning, and okay, if he wins that game I have nothing to say, but also the game before actually I was losing to opponent at one point, which so yeah, altogether I got here somehow, and then today, first game I started with black, which is okay, a bit tricky, in a sense that, you know, okay, if you win with black you have big advantage, but if you lose it can be uncomfortable. And draw is not sure, for the other player because he loses the white game. So yeah, and then I got kind of an okay position this time out of the opening. And then I felt at one point that we were both playing for more than it was in the position. I mean, objectively it should just be equal, I think, after c5. But then also Radek was making very ambitious moves, and I also tried to create something. And then this resulted in a rook game, which probably is fine for white, but it just seems extremely uncomfortable because I'm literally not risking anything, and he has to watch out every time for checks. And yeah, at the end, when he was low on time, he just blundered the mate, which obviously was extremely lucky.
Radek, this rook ending in the first game, as far as I understand, double rook endings are extremely tricky. Was it difficult to decide between the different defensive setups you had to use, and that's maybe the reason why you couldn't get the draw?
Sort of, at first, I probably didn't have to go for this endgame. I should just go DC instead of Rook C1. But Rook C1, I thought that this is like playing for more, which was probably not necessary at that. And when we got there, probably I should do something like to lose H3 pawn and go for the endgame 1 versus G and F. But I didn't really want to go for that. And then okay, I got I had like 30 seconds seconds, so it's now of course it's easy to say where I should improve, but when you are sitting there with seconds, you don't really know if you should spend those seconds exactly now or it will be needed in one or in some other moves. So yeah, this yeah, I should probably defend better, but obviously it's not what happened, and yeah.
So having lost the first game, obviously you have to try and win with black, a difficult situation against a strong Grandmaster. You went for the Sicilian defense, and although it seemed equal, you were trying to make something happen in the bishop ending. Did you see any other option with hindsight? Could you play differently? Was there any other chances?
Not really. Actually, what I've played was probably not so smart, because I saw that this line might happen, and also Richard went to his room when we had this small break, so probably I should go for something else, which I did, because it's probably what you might see in the in this break, and then we very fast went for the end game, which is obviously just a draw. There are not so many, I mean, ideas to be even played, so probably I should play something more off the book, but I didn't really expect that I will lose the game with white, so I was not really ready for this scenario.
Okay. In any case, congratulations. You've had excellent tournament, taking into account you came as a last replacement. And back to Richard. Tomorrow you're playing the semi-final. Your opponent is Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure you've played against him many other times. How do you assess this matchup?
Yeah, actually I haven't played him too many times, but they were quite painful. I think I am having -2 score or something. I don't really have expectations. I mean, like I've said, I used the first game to Radek here, and afterwards also my play was, let's say, shaky at best, if it's an appropriate word to use. So, and Hikaru was playing very strong and very stable. I mean, yesterday I think he was, you know, kind of shaky as well. Let's put it this way, but okay, it happens. And Sipenko was also a very strong opponent. So yeah. I don't know. I am really tired from this tiebreak, and also, like yesterday, I had a must-win game to win, so it takes a toll. But I guess there is no rest for the wicked, you know. So I have to keep on going. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you both for coming to the press conference, and good game tomorrow.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so somewhat unexpectedly, the tiebreak is over, and we know the pairs of the semi-finalists. Yeah, the semi-final, to remind you guys, will happen tomorrow. Same.
And you said that it was predetermined which groups will be playing against each other.
Yes.
Is it A versus B?
Yeah.
And C versus D?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we have no options left, since the journalist, the press conference that we've heard right now, it was clear that Naka is playing against Rapport, right? Then
yes.
We are left with Aronian and Domingues, who will be playing each other. I believe we are still waiting for another interview with Linier Domingues, and, well, quite possibly Wesley So. Players are really kind to join, even the loser. Right, so while we are setting up for an interview, one more time, thanks to the sponsors of this event, right, the companies that supported the Grand Prix in Berlin, the Grand Prix Series 2022. It's Kaspersky, it's Algorand and FIDE Online Arena, and now we'll have you know, a little ad break with one of the sponsors' videos.
And joining me in the press conference, the last interview of the day, Grandmaster Wesley So, Grandmaster Leonid Domingues just finished their, I would say, epic tiebreak with a very exciting second game. Wesley, give us your take on the first game first. You played with white, this queenless ending in the Queen's Gambit. It could be tricky if black doesn't defend it well. Give me your take on that game, the first game.
Oh yeah. First of all, yes, unfortunately, this tiebreak didn't go any further. It's just 2 games, so it's very short. Accidents happen. And so I knew coming today anything could happen. Probably it's a 50-50 chance, and Lenier is very dangerous in the opening. So I didn't really prepare that much in the opening because you get too tired. So just decide to play whatever. I was hoping I would get a little something this end game, but I played this line against Lenier 2 or 3 times already and got nothing every single time. So and this game also I didn't get much, but I wasn't particularly worried. The crucial was the second game when I had black. Lenier is very dangerous, so in the opening, so I wasn't really sure what to play. I opted for this line c6 and f6, which I had taken a bit look at, but it looks very dubious actually over the board. So maybe I should have just played what I played the other day, which was e takes d4. I'm not so sure where I made a mistake, but the position got quite difficult. My pawn structure was very vulnerable, and yeah, and I thought I had some tricks, but in the end I just missed this move king h1, which was totally winning because after king h1, rook f3, I forgot he has rook e8 in checkmate. So yeah, life happens. I'm not sure where I made the mistake in the second game, but
okay. Lenier, first of all, congratulations for the victory. The first game, playing with black against Wesley, I'm sure you were quite happy when the game ended in a draw. Were you expecting this ending in the first game, or something more aggressive from Wesley?
I wasn't really thinking too much about the opening because these 15 minutes games are always decided in some kind of middle game position. I mean, you make mistakes, you get a bad position, maybe then you survive. Or I mean, it's all about the calculation skills and your overall form in that particular day. So I decided to rest, and I knew that Wesley could play the endgame because we already played the same line a few times, and it's a bit dangerous. But I think I was probably very slightly worse as usual in these positions at some point, but maybe nothing special. And I think after I was able to trade all the pieces on c5, maybe it got just much easier to defend.
And the second game, in some sense, it was similar to the game you played here. At least the pawn structure was slightly similar. And also you played queen g3, offering a queen exchange. It's a fun statistic compared to the first game. At one point, did you think that the game was definitely going your way?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I mean, I knew that my position was promising, maybe even clearly better, because his pawns are really weak and somehow all my pieces are well placed. But again, I had no time. I had very little time, and it's clear that with just one move, you can spoil everything. So I wasn't really thinking too much about the result. I mean, I knew I had chances, but I was trying to just find some moves. And okay, after finding this king h1, I think I deserve to qualify because it's such a difficult move. In fact, I was lucky because I thought that I have rook e2 and I missed knight e1, which actually wins for black.
So at that point, you didn't see very clearly that you were going to win the game?
I mean, I saw king h1 at the last moment. I think I played with a few seconds. So
well, both of you were very long time, that is true.
Lenier had 10 seconds and you were almost touching the rook.
I actually
and
saw
I was
you
praying.
do something, a very strange move. Yes.
I couldn't keep playing.
So that's why it was very exciting. Last question.
I think my best chance really to qualify for next round was my game against Pentala. I mean, I saw the winning move, like I have a few winning moves, but I just decided to play something better, like a4, and then totally missing this queen d7. I think it's very impressive how Lenier didn't falter after losing against me with white.
the classical game, and he won the next 2 games with black and with white, which I wasn't really expecting. So it's a really well-deserved performance. But yeah, I think my best chance was yesterday, because today anything could have happened.
One last question for Wesley. You're playing the second leg, if I'm not mistaken, the third leg.
Yeah,
Would you be staying around, or are you thinking of going back and then coming? What are your plans? And what can you take away from this tournament to improve even more on your play for the third leg?
Yeah, no, I think I played very decently in this tournament. Other than this game against Krishna, I really didn't miss any chances. Like I see as much chance as I could in each game. So I think I'm quite pleased with my play in the classical games. But obviously that missed chance, and I have to go home, which is not ideal. But that's what chess is. You train so hard, and then everything really depends on that crucial few seconds of decision making that determines what's gonna happen in your tournament. And so that's why you gotta keep training and try to keep getting better, because you know that accidents are gonna happen sooner or later. Blunders are gonna happen. So what you do is you try to minimize them as much as possible. And I think I'm trying to do that. But my next tournament is in Berlin, over the board, but still a couple months away. So gonna go back home, gonna train. There's some online chess tournaments. I might stay in Berlin for a few days. I think there's an online tournament chess.com tomorrow. And then try to change my ticket and then fly back and try to, for my next tournament, I think I should be in better physical shape and also in better mental shape.
Okay. Lenier, last question for you. We'll see you tomorrow facing Levon Aronian, your new teammate in the Olympia team. I suspect you've played many games with Levon before. How's your score with him, and how do you rate or assess this semi-final match with Aronian, although I understand you haven't had much time to think about it yet?
Yes, so of course a very tough match, but that's what you should expect at this stage in the tournament. Levon is a very strong player, very interesting and very challenging to play him always. But yeah, as you said, I have to calm down a bit, because it feels a bit surreal after losing the classical game against Wesley. I felt that I'll go home by Saturday, and I was able to make a comeback. So it took a lot of energy. So I'll try to get some rest and let that settle, and then I'll think about the next match.
Okay, thanks
Thank you.
both of you for coming, and good luck in future tournaments, and good luck to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck in your match.
Thanks.
Okay, so thanks. Cheers.
Okay, and yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the interview. Jesse, are you still with me? Let me know.
I am. I was listening to the interview quite intently. And
Yeah,
honestly,
that's-
everything that Wesley was saying, I was just absorbing, so it was quite nice.
Yeah, but did you pay attention to what Lenier has said, that he was not expecting to come back himself
Yeah.
after losing to Wesley with white? So it's
On Saturday.
if you think,
Yeah.
it's a really big achievement for Domingues, because he won 2 last games and then he beat Wesley in the tiebreak. So that's certainly deserves praise. So tomorrow, a
Yep,
reminder.
big congratulations.
Yeah. Tomorrow, a reminder, 2 semi-finals starting at the same time. We'll have only 2 classical games running simultaneously, so a lot of time to talk about other things. So this is chat, this is our viewers, but me and Jesse, we will need your help with all various questions that you may come up with.
Yes, please, I need you to go home now, or if you're home, grab a piece of paper and write down all the questions you can think about, because we can just sort of ask Miro all afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will be back tomorrow with the semi-finals. It will be the same time, same place, as I always say. So 3 p.m. Berlin, they are starting, and then adjust to your time zone accordingly. And that's all from me. Jesse, unless you want to add something.
No, that
No.
sounds good. It was a very
Yeah.
short day at the office, but I'll definitely be seeing you tomorrow.
Yeah, it was indeed a very short day in the office, but it's a long tournament. It's a tough tournament for the players as well as the commentators. So we love those short days sometimes. See you then. See you tomorrow, guys.
Bye bye.